Hello and welcome back to the Arsenal Ramble, brought to you by myself, Dom, and my co-rambler, Dave. In today's episode, we're going to be chatting through the 0-0 draw to Newcastle tonight at the Emirates, frustrations and tribulations. But before we get into all of that, Dave, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks, mate. Pretty frustrated as well. Kind of forgot what it feels like to not win. But at least it's not a loss, so, could be worse. How are you, mate?
Yeah, exactly. And we're still top of the table. We've still got a little bit of breathing space. And because it was a 6-pointer of a game, you don't want Newcastle to be gaining any ground on us. So at the very least, they've not gained any ground on us. And exactly. It's only really Man City who have any potential ground to have gained from that game. But, they drew the other day, so they're not infallible either.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be a lot worse. It's a game that if you don't win, you don't lose. So that's what's happened. So yeah, could be a lot worse.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get straight into the game then. We kind of started the game like a house on fire, which is a familiar for Arsenal this season. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to actually break the duct in the first 5 minutes or so that we were brilliant, did we?
No, couldn't get those chances turned into goals. I think Odegaard's probably was the biggest, which was fairly early on within that first phase of dominance. It was sort of I think it was a volley effort, went over the bar. Probably could have done a bit better with it, really. Gabriel had a good chance. Saka, another good chance from the byline where he took on Dan Burn. It was sort of made you think, is this going to be a sign of things to come in the game? Saka absolutely roasting Dan Burn. You'd think that'd be a bit of a mismatch with the size of Dan Burn. But they tended to deal with Saka and Martinelli pretty well on the wings. Despite those early chances created down there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to be honest, I thought the same as you with the whole Saka versus Dan Burn situation. However, after Saka burned Burn the first time on the right-hand side, Eddie Howe and Newcastle were quite wise to actually, they doubled and sometimes tripled up on Saka every time he received the ball in that area, which it really did nullify him. And where Arsenal have been great in previous games this season, it has been when teams have doubled up on Saka, we've been able to shift the ball from right to left really quickly. But for whatever reason in today's game, it just seemed like the guys in the middle, so Odegaard and Partey and Xhaka, the passing really, it was just about half a yard off every time, or the ball was just behind whoever they're trying to pass it to. We couldn't quite shift the ball quick enough to be able to make use of that overload on the other side. And credit to Newcastle, they defended really, really well, and they made it so frustrating for us, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they've came to the Emirates with a game plan, and that was to get a draw, to get a 0-0, to park the bus, play that low block. And that's essentially what they did all game. And like you say, credit to them because they do defend very, very well, and they really did nullify our wide options with Martinelli and Saka. It was a game that I was really hoping to see Odegaard step up and create it in those more central channels, but he just didn't really get much time on the ball. And like you just said, our passing just wasn't quite as crisp. And I think we just didn't have that extra yard to be able to create the whole heap, especially when they were playing such a low block. It was difficult to break them down.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even some of Odegaard's more spectacular, audacious passes that he tries, and usually he pulls them off. He was putting a bit too much power on them, so it was just getting away from players like Xhaka who were stood in good positions to be able to receive the ball, or it would just fizz past players, and we're not used to seeing that from Odegaard, so it's a bit of a shock really to see a drop off in how good he's been recently. But it's just it could just be a one-off game. He's been so great in the last 10, 15 fixtures we've had, especially the last 2 games. So everyone can have an off day. But yeah, a bit disappointing from him, really. But yeah, other than that, I was quite impressed that the team that's third in the league came to Arsenal with a game plan that they were playing for a draw. Basically, they didn't have belief. In the first 5 minutes they tried to play, but then they realised how if they were to stretch the play, we would completely exploit that. So the fact that they came to the Emirates with the idea that they've got to just play for a draw because they're not going to get anything more from this game, it says a lot about how far we've come.
It does show how far we've come when third place are coming to us and playing for that. In fact, they only had 1 shot on target the entire game. That's how much they sat back and just defended and sort of hoped they could counter. But they didn't really even create much from the counter, to be honest. I think their best chance of the game came right at the death of the first half. It was a corner flicked on. Joel Linton narrowly missed it at the back post. It was fizzed in pretty quick, but you'd have to say, had that gone in, it could have been a very, very frustrating and tough second half. So we probably went into the break quite happy, to be honest, because despite not scoring, we still were by far the superior team. We were controlling large possessions of the game, still creating chances, not the most clearer-cut chances, but I still think we would have gone into that break the stronger of the teams. What have you got anything to add on the first half? It's a difficult one, really. There wasn't a whole heap to analyse, really, was there?
No, not really. I think if there is anything to add about that first half, it's not actually the team. It's more the refereeing decisions and how suspect and a bit strange, really. He started the game. It was okay the first 10 minutes or so, but then from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, he started giving yellow cards out left, right, and centre for challenges that weren't really yellow card worthy. And then it almost seemed like he had a word in his ear to say, look, Mr. Madley, you're giving out too many yellow cards. You need to rein it in a little bit. And then there were a few challenges, and I'm not being biased, from both teams. There were a few challenges from both teams which were definitely yellow card worthy. And then he wouldn't give a yellow card because he's already given too many out. And there was no consistency in the first half. I think there was I can't actually remember specific examples because we've only just finished the game, but where a player would have the first foul and it would be such there would be nothing in it basically, and he'd give a yellow card, and then there'll be a player who's breaking through, and 9 times out of 10, well, it should be 10 times out of 10, that's a yellow card if they get brought down, and he wouldn't give a yellow card for it. So the refereeing inconsistency was really strange, and that's all I would add from the first half.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. He really did lose control, didn't he? It seemed like he was making decisions based on emotion and previous decisions and sort of how fair it would be based on what he gave before and all these sort of other aspects which shouldn't really come into play. And for the last 5 minutes of that half, it got really, really scrappy, didn't it? I think Newcastle made 8 fouls in that first half, alongside persistently wasting time.
Oh God!
And just the 2 bookings to Arsenal's 3. He just was not having a good evening. I think the halftime came at a good time for the ref because it allowed him to just sort of reset, come back out, and I think he did improve in the second half. But he was still dishing out yellow cards, but he had to keep consistent, I guess.
How bad is it that for a Premier League elite level referee, we have to say halftime came at a good time for the referee?
Yeah.
It's like they shouldn't need to have a break. They should be absolute elite level referees. But yeah, I know what you're saying, and it didn't help having Kieran Trippier in his ear constantly all game. Anytime there's any decision to make, Kieran Trippier was there. And to be fair, I guess it does kind of work because of the decisions that he ended up making. So maybe some of our boys need to take a leaf out of his book and get into the referee's ear a bit more.
Well, I think we tried it, especially with some of the penalty sort of shouts later on in the game, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But I think we tried to give it some to sort of sway the refs' minds, or even the officials in the VAR box to have a look at it. But yeah, for whatever reason, it just wasn't working. It wasn't going our way this game with decisions. But we come out in the second half, probably not as strong as we did in the first half. I think there was a chance right at the start of the second half, due to, for Newcastle that is, due to Ramsdale not quite kicking it out as quickly as he should have, which resulted in a very good chance for Newcastle. And that sort of then allowed them to really get back into the game a little bit for the first maybe 15 minutes of the second half. Why do you think? Why do you think that was? Why don't you think we came out of that second half as good as we normally are?
I think maybe we've been so used to leading at the break, or at least knowing that we've had an absolute onslaught from the first half, so we'd created so many chances, whereas I think they entered the second half knowing that they hadn't really got a lot from the first half, and thinking they're not really too sure how they're going to approach this. Really, they don't know how to break them down. They've been struggling, and they don't want to do play another 45 minutes of the same sort of horseshoe, football. But it's uncharacteristic of Ramsdale, really, and we've said this in the last couple of games, that he's wanted to play long all the time, and then in this instance he just dawdled on the ball, didn't he? He had an option to play short or play long, and it was like he was caught in two minds and didn't want to do either until he got pressed into making a decision, and then he kind of fluffed it, didn't he? Really, and it fell to Newcastle player, and then they had. To be fair, I think Newcastle should have been more clinical there. They themselves were caught in a bit of indecision and didn't actually get a real shot away. But we could have really been punished in that moment, and we were quite fortunate, really, to have not been. But yeah, I don't know what's up with Ramsdale at the minute. It seems like everything else in his game's pretty decent still. His handling skills and what have you, but it's his distribution. But that's what he's in the team for. That's what we brought Ramsdale in the team to do, is to have elite level distribution, and that's what's letting him down at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, in the last 2 or 3 games, West Ham, Brighton, today's game, he's not really had to pull off that many saves, has he? But notably, his distribution has been quite poor in comparison to previous. And even today, I noticed he was going long to Saka sometimes. He was being marked by 6'7" Dan Burn. And I'm thinking, why? What are the odds of Saka winning that ball? And I don't think he won it once. So, some strange decision making from Ramsdale almost caught him out with that chance for Newcastle. It really did seem that was the only way Newcastle were going to score. It was going to be from an Arsenal error or a set piece. There wasn't really any other way that they were getting into this game. So for us to concede that chance, that was disappointing.
Yeah, definitely. And you saw the Newcastle fans behind the goal. Whenever they won a corner, they celebrated like they'd scored, because they knew that this was the only way that they could possibly even get a chance in the game. Yeah. So, yeah, it really did show that there's one particular lad. I'm going off piece here a little bit, but there's one particular lad in the stand for Newcastle with his shirt off, and every time the camera panned to him, he was going absolutely mental. And to be fair, for away fans, you do love to see that atmosphere being built in your stadium.
Yeah, exactly. It was, like you say, it was the only way they were getting the game, so they're celebrating it like a goal almost. Should we get into the first penalty shout in the game? I think it was around the 60th minute. There was a Saka free kick, puts it into the box, and Dan Burn is practically dragging Gabriel's shirt off his body. I've seen some images where his t-shirt is practically reversed on his body because it's been twizzled that much. What are your thoughts on that? Penalty?
Well, when it actually happened initially, they didn't really, on the commentary, they didn't really talk about it at all. It was only once the ball had rotated out and a few minutes later they started talking, oh, there was a bit of an altercation in the box and they are having a look at it. But normally if something so big had happened in the box, Gary Neville would do his "oh" noise, and it would get analysed straight away. So I thought that was a bit weird, but I do definitely think that was a penalty. He had two hands on him. He was pulling his shirt. We've seen penalties given for a lot less. Notably, the shirt pull that Xhaka had on Bernardo Silva last season. The little tiny shirt pull. As he's running past him, at which he then subsequently dived afterwards and still won the penalty. But this is a clear as day example of someone being thrown to the ground whilst having the shirt pulled, and they still don't get a penalty for it. And it's crazy. That's what VAR's for. Why are they not pulling that back?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm not sure how VAR aren't getting involved on that. I think they get a bit too literal with this. It's got to be a clear and obvious error. But in my mind, that is a clear and obvious error. Anyway, the ref hasn't seen it. So maybe that's why it's not being looked at, because he didn't even make a judgment call. But yeah, they didn't seem to shout about it as much as they should either, Arsenal players. I wish we'd have sort of screamed for it a bit more as well. I mean, I know it's all psychological, but I think it does play into the minds of the people in the VAR box, the refs. It plays into their minds when making that decision. But like you said, the commentary didn't really discuss it much. And I'm also sure that the VAR officials are listening to the commentary alongside the game, and that also plays into the mind, because I've definitely seen games where Gary Neville's been commentating on Man United games, and like you say, he'll make his "ooh" noise for real half chances, and I'm thinking he's doing that on purpose because he knows they are listening. So yeah, it's psychological stuff, but it was just an absolute stonewaller for me, and so frustrating that it wasn't given.
Yeah, well, that's the thing as well. We're not robots. It's human error. So it's a human error from the referee, and then it's humans that are then judging it on the VAR. But it's not like one of those where players are always quite physical when a corner or a free kick's coming in. Sometimes they say, "Oh, it's half a dozen of one," or whatever the saying is. They're both as bad as each other, kind of thing. Gabriel didn't have anything on him, did he? Really, he didn't have his hands on him. He was literally just running through, and he had two hands on Gabriel and pulled him to the ground. But we've had a few of those this season, haven't we? We had most notably on Gabriel Jesus, didn't we, where it should have been a red card for him for the player denying a goal scoring opportunity running through. I think that was against Southampton, wasn't it? But yeah, it just seems like we're not getting these decisions, and it is really frustrating because these decisions change games. The goals change games, penalties change games, and for when you're playing a team that plays as negative and defensive as Newcastle played today, you really do need to get that initial goal so that they have to then come out, and then you've got a real game on your hands.
Yeah, I wonder if the fact that like you say, because it was a corner and there's so many men in the box that like you say, they see that, and it's not like a 1v1 isolated incident. It's like a big jumble of players, so they just sort of treat it that way and not actually take into account the foul on Gabriel. I do think that will play into the ref's mind as well.
Yeah, I agree. But then at the same time, they shouldn't then be given those decisions in other games. If that's going to be the benchmark, that when it's a corner and you have a bit of argy-bargy, and because to be fair, I quite like the argy-bargy. I think it should be a physical game, and when a corner comes in, players should be able to give each other a little push here and there, and it should be all kosher. But because there's a line and it says that you're not actually allowed to do that, then if you're going to give it in some games, you have to give it in all games.
Yeah, and shirt pulling is one of those ones where it's a guaranteed yellow anywhere else on the pitch. I mean, Odegaard got a yellow for it in the game, a tiny little pull on, I think it's Almiron. Wasn't really going anywhere. In fact, he even still made the tackle after he barely even tugged on his shirt. Still got booked, So if we're giving it there, then it's a penalty, especially when it's being dragged back from a set piece. So yeah, it's really frustrating. But having said that, we still pressed on for the goal. 80th minute, we had a corner. Martinelli, of all people, got on the end of it, sort of flashed across the face of goal, if you remember. I was really hoping that we could, someone that was running in at the back post like they normally do, but there was just no one there at this time, which was frustrating. But another big chance went missing there.
Yeah, everyone got drawn towards the ball, didn't they? Everyone got sucked into the near post, and you were just wishing that you'd have Eddie Nketiah or someone just at the back stick to be able to tap it in. But to be fair, Martinelli wasn't actually too far away himself from it just falling in. I think keeper was flat-footed, wasn't he? He wasn't getting there. But yeah, I think that's another one where if it's not your day, it's not your day, On a different day, I guess if that was against Brighton, then we probably would have scored that. But it felt like everything was against us today, really. And we could have played. I know we're going to get onto this about the extra time and stuff, but I feel like we probably could have played for an extra 20 minutes or so and not scored. So,
yeah. Do you think we were crying out for some attacking substitutions? I mean, I'm looking at that bench. I wasn't really seeing any obvious player to come on. I think Vieira was probably the most attacking option we had. What were you thinking with that?
Yeah, well, there wasn't really anywhere for us to be able to roll the dice or rejig things, was there? Like, it was 80 minutes in and we'd made one sub, I think, and that was a defensive sub. It was Ben White for Tomiyasu. And to be fair, our first 11 is great, but they do get tired, and you do need to have, if whatever you're doing isn't working, then you need to change it, and you need to change the personnel to be able to try and do something different. But we look to our bench, and there really is nowhere for us to, like you say, we've got Vieira, but then with Odegaard playing how well as he has been, you don't really want to change him because, as you say, he could just have that one moment of brilliance and then that can win you the game. So you're reluctant to take Odegaard off. So then where else are you going to fit Vieira on? You're not going to take him off for Saka because Saka's got the beat and a burn and he's pinning him back. So other than that, we don't really have any depth for substitutions at all. So it would be really interesting to see if we get another attacker in January.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't a case of anyone was playing particularly bad. I think Martinelli had his chances. Saka was doing really well. I thought Nketiah had a really good game. Odegaard probably was the quieter of the four, but Yeah, for me, I think if we'd have had a fresh attacking player, and I'm talking striker or a wide forward coming on, after they've been defending, you saw all their players pulling up with hamstring issues and muscular issues because that's how much they must have been running that game because they were practically defending from minute one. If we'd had fresh legs attacking them, I'd like to think we could have, really caused them some more problems. But we just didn't have those options to bring on. And like you said, I'm really hoping that in this window we can add someone because I think it's going to be crucial if we're going to pick up these vital points to keep us in this title race.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it does actually show you the level of how far we've come because we're looking at this feeling a bit deflated, but we've just won how many in a row? I think in our last we're undefeated in 10. And we've only drawn 2, I think, of them, and it's unbelievable form. It's title-winning form. And it just shows you the levels that we've set that we're feeling a little bit disappointed about this game. But yeah, I do think if and when we get someone in the transfer window, I think everyone's eyes are set on Mudryk, and his eyes are definitely set on Arsenal. If we do get Mudryk in the January transfer window, he does feel like he's this type of guy to come into Arsenal and be able to change games and game states the way that we had tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he would be a perfect player to come on. He's tricky, he's pacey, he's direct. Someone in that mould to run against Dan Burn when he's absolutely flagging at 70 minutes onward has got to be a good chance of creating chances, basically. The fact that we've got Smith Rowe coming back from injury as well is also going to be a huge boost. I was hoping to see him on the bench today, really, because he's been back in training. But maybe this upcoming Oxford game is going to be more suited to reintegrating him back into the squad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And seeing Smith Rowe back, it does make me wonder how he's going to worm his way back into the first team, but he's always a great option to have. And as you said, because of our lack of depth on the subs bench, then even like last season, he contributed so well from the substitutes bench. I think he was in double figures mainly from the subs bench. So every good team has that player. I think United used to have Solskjaer, didn't they? He used to come on and get loads of goals from the bench. So yeah, it would be great to see him back. And just going back to the game a little bit, I thought that Zinchenko and Xhaka played too much of a similar role during the game. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but it seemed like they were both picking up really similar positions, and because they're both left-footed players with similar technical ability, and it felt like they were always in each other's space, really.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I noticed that as well. And one of the substitutions that personally I would have made is I would have got Tierney on for Xhaka and pushed Zinchenko into that role on his own, because like you say, they were occupying each other's spaces. It would have been better to utilise Zinchenko's more attacking flair. That is one sort of attacking option that I would have gone with personally. But
sorry to interrupt, but because you could then stretch the players physically as much as you can then, because Newcastle wanted to stay compact whilst they were doubling up on our wingers. So if you then bring on another player like Tierney who's going to run in behind, you can have Martinelli cutting in, dragging the players in, and then popping it off to Tierney who's running in behind. But Zinchenko didn't really offer any outlet going forward at all, really. And whilst Xhaka has been decent making a few runs, he really isn't as effective as Tierney at running in behind.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think Zinchenko was making some good forward passes and sort of splitting the lines at times, and maybe giving him that space on his own would have allowed a bit more freedom to push on even further. Plus the fact that I mean, we even joked at half time, didn't we? Who's going to be the player to get a second yellow and get sent off? And we both probably would have said Xhaka, especially when he's making stupid, reckless challenges.
And he almost did, didn't he? He almost did get sent off.
Exactly. So if there's one player you want, off, and to give yourself a little bit of a reassurance that we're going to finish the game with 11 men, then it probably would have been him.
Yeah.
But it's easy to reflect, isn't it, after the game and say this is what we should have done. Who knows? They were tough to break down. We eventually did break them down though, and did create probably our best chance of the game, and that was in the 87th minute, a really big Eddie Nketiah chance. I don't think he could have done much more with it, to be honest, and it was a great save from Nick Pope with his feet. It's again really, really frustrating. But what did you think to that one?
Yeah, the control was absolutely superb. He just cushions it with the underside of his foot, and to be able to get half a yard and get a shot off. But the angle is against him, but he scored from that kind of angle in the last game that we played. So it's definitely in his locker to be able to score that goal. I think you just got to give Nick Pope credit, really. He gets down well, he gets a save with his legs, and he covers his angles well, because to be fair, there wasn't really much of an angle to aim at, unless he went near post, you could maybe argue. But yeah, Nick Pope cut the angle off really well, but it was a great chance, a brilliant chance, and maybe if it was a little bit more accurate or had a bit more venom in the shot, then we might have scored that.
Yeah, I think you just put it down to great effort, great save. Just one of those, really. Sort of the story of the game, isn't it? Just two pretty solid teams nullifying each other. But yeah, I would probably say that was our biggest chance. Eventually, though, there was another penalty shout, if you will, and that was right at the death of the game. A handball. I can't remember which Newcastle player it was, but it clearly did strike his arm. Would you say that was a penalty, or would you say that's more ball to hand?
Well, when you watch it with the slow-mo and all the replays, you're kind of clutching at straws, aren't you? You're thinking, like, come on, please give it, because you're thinking on the emotional side of it, you're thinking, please give me a penalty. But to be fair, if you take your Arsenal hat off and if you're looking at it as a mutual, he's literally like a yard or so away from. Is it Martinelli who was trying to cross it in? I think it was Martinelli, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. It was about a yard, 2 yards away, and he's absolutely blasted it at him. And you can't dive in like that with your arms behind your back, because you'd have no balance. He's done it with his arm up, because it's not in an unnatural position, because he's using it to steady himself as he's diving in. So I would be really disappointed if that was given against us. However, at the time and with all the emotion of it, I was desperate for them to give us it as a penalty. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think you're right to try and to switch it up and analyse it in terms of, if it was against us, how would you feel? That's always a good barometer of how you really feel about the decision, because obviously bias does come into play a little bit. And I think I'm with you on that one. If it was one of our players and the ball would have struck at one of our defenders' arms, I'm not sure you could say that he can really do much about it. But Arteta clearly thought otherwise. But this is probably going into the psychological element of trying to get into the minds of the officials. He was absolutely screaming for it, running up and down the touchline. He even had a little bit of a tiff with Eddie Howe at the end, didn't he?
Yeah, that was pretty funny, actually. But I guess if you're Arteta, you're drawing 0-0. You've just had a really frustrating game where the opposition's pretty much just time wasted for 90% of it. And so you're in the 96th minute and you've got a handball penalty shout. You're going to go absolutely nuts, aren't you, and hopefully that they give it, even if you believe it was or not. Because let's be honest, Arteta from where there's no chance he had a clear view of if it was a handball or not, really, was it? So, of course, he's going to go crazy for that. But yeah, I think the first penalty shout was a definite pen, and the second penalty shout, I would be disappointed if it was given against us. So probably not a penalty.
Did VAR even look at it? I don't remember seeing any confirmation whether VAR even looked at that towards the end. Did you see that?
I think they did, and they agreed with the on-field decision. They didn't say there wasn't enough to turn it over or anything like that. I think they agreed with the on-field decision. But yeah, it's frustrating. But I think by that point the game had already gone, really, hadn't it? We'd had our chances to be able to put it to bed and actually score a goal in the first 5 minutes and maybe not leave it to the 96th minute to be able to have a penalty shout. But sometimes that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I think like we said right at the start of the pod, upon reflection, it's a really, really tough game against third place Newcastle, who do not concede a lot of goals. Frustratingly, it's the first game we've not actually managed to score. I think we just sort of cancel each other out a little bit. We probably were the better team, and it was just one of those where if you don't win it, you don't lose it, and that's exactly what we did. So it could be a valuable point come the end of the season. I don't think many teams are going to play Newcastle and get much. The only frustrating thing is, we were at home, so you'd like to think we could, maybe get the 3 points at home, then maybe have the draw at St James's. But like I've said, I think it could be a valuable point come the end of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, Newcastle have only actually conceded 11 goals all season, and that's in 18 games. And that's the best in the league. The second best is Arsenal with 14 goals. So, yeah, you're playing against statistically what's the best defence in the league this season. So it's not a surprise that it was a frustrating day for our attackers. But we know how much potential our guys have got, and we know how free-flowing and how threatening they are and how many goals they can score. So I'm not going to be too worried about them. We've given a little bit of ground up to Man City, but they've got to play Chelsea, I think, next. I think they're away to Chelsea in their next game. So that's no easy feat either. So we could still maintain a nice healthy gap going into the following fixtures. So it's not all panic stations just yet.
No. I mean, we're not going to win every game. We're going to drop points, and I'd rather drop them to teams that are around us. We've dropped them to Man United, we've dropped them to Newcastle. We're not dropping them to, the teams at the bottom of the table, like West Ham. We're putting in solid performances. We're getting 3 points on the board there, and I think come the end of the season, the table will reflect that and put us in good stead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And talking about a team that is, well, they're not actually around us at the minute, which is hilarious, but our next fixture in the Premier League is against Tottenham Hotspur, and that is away at their ground. How do you reckon we're going to do in that game?
Well, I think at the end of the last pod, we sort of did a little prediction, didn't we? I think we both went with a draw, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Just thinking, actually, did any of our players get yellow cards today that would have put them on enough yellow cards to suspend them for the North London derby?
I was just about to say, I think most of our team got yellow cards today, so I will have to look at the players that didn't get yellow cards. I don't think Saliba got a yellow card, and he was one of the guys that was due a suspension if he did. So I think it was him. Was it? I think the other player was Gabriel Jesus, but obviously he didn't play. And was it Saka? I think Saka was the third player. Yeah,
Saka's on 3 or 4, isn't he? So
he didn't get a yellow card.
So it could have been him.
I'm pretty sure.
No, he didn't. It was Xhaka, Odegaard, and Nketiah and Zinchenko with the yellow cards. Xhaka, I'm not sure about, because he is a very bookable player for us. So that will be interesting to find out. Hopefully, he's still eligible for that game, because he's a crucial element to our midfield. But
he's only had 3 this season, Xhaka. I've just
Right.
googled it.
Well, there we go then. I think we should be okay. There's a little consolation for everybody. We've got a fully fit team with no suspensions for the North London derby. But yeah, I think I'd be happy with a draw away at Tottenham. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm moving the goalposts a little bit now though, because I was expecting us to win this game. I feel like if we go from the form that we've had to then get 2 points from 6, it does seem quite underwhelming for the high standards that we've already set. But then at the same time, you can't really complain getting a point away from home at Spurs. So
they're not playing well though, are they?
No, and I think it's probably the best time to play them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really would hope that we win that game. But yeah, I'm with you. I think we're going to have another frustrating draw. And I think they're going to set up really similarly to how Newcastle did. I think this is going to be, unfortunately, a mould for teams to play against us this season because of how we've absolutely ripped teams apart. I think everyone's going to look at Newcastle now and they'll see that if they do try and frustrate us and shut up shop, then they might be able to get 1 or 2 chances from set pieces, and that's going to be the mould to be able to try and beat Arsenal in 2022-2023.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's why it's so crucial that we keep coming out into these games from minute 1 and really pushing for that opening goal, because that really does put them under pressure. But if they can come out of those 15, 20 minutes, having not conceded, it gives them belief, doesn't it? But we shall see.
Right. Okay, yeah, I think we've covered everything from the game today. Not that there was much to talk about. There wasn't too many goals or much excitement, but hey ho, that's football sometimes. But yeah, we're going to be doing another podcast after the Oxford game in the FA Cup. So we'll see you next time.
Take care, bye, guys. Bye.